Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to explain the answers of reading quiz chapter 12. Chapter 12 is about Keynesian economics, and the first question in the quiz could be a little bit complicated. Please read on your reading assignment. First go to the first one, 12.1, and then you will find an appendix called the expenditure output model. Once you click on this, you'll find that there is an example to solve expenditure output models that will help you to solve this kind of questions. In the exam, you'll be responsible with the multiplier model, but you're not going to solve any expenditure output model. First, read the question and then find out the answer. The chart below gives the data necessary to make a Keynesian cross diagram. Assume that the tax rate is 0.4 or 40% of national income. So let's write it down. Tax is equal to 0.4. And MPC, which is marginal propensity to consume, out of after-tax income is 0.9. So let's first talk about what is marginal propensity to consume. Marginal propensity to consume shows up what percentage of our income we spend when we have an increase in income. For instance, if your income increases by $100 and you spend $90 of it, then the propensity to consume is going to be 90 over 100, which is 0.9. That means every additional dollar, an increase in your income, 90 cents you spend and 10 cents you save. And investment is given. Investment is 58. Government spending, G is 60. Exports are 40. And imports are 0.1 of after-tax income. So that means we are spending 10% of our income for imports. So MPI is equal to 0.1. Now, given this, we are going to fill out this table. Let's read the alt text 2. This chart contains the following columns: national income, after-tax income, consumption, I plus G plus X, and minus imports, and then we have aggregate expenditures. The national income column contains the following values: 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and 600. The only other value provided is consumption for national income level of 100, which is 104. So we need to find what is the equilibrium level of national income for this economy. First, we can calculate the second column, which is after-tax income. What we are going to do is we are going to draw this table here. First, income, and that income is 100, 200, and then we have 300. We have 400, we have 500, and we have 600. Now we are going to calculate after-tax income here. And that is going to be just multiplying this 100 by 60%, because 40% you pay for the tax. The first one is going to be $60. And the second one is going to be, always you are multiplying by 60%, because you pay 40% for tax. The remaining is your income. 120, 3 times 6, 180, 4 times 6, 240, 5 times 6, 300, 6 times 6, 36, 360. So these are the after-tax income. Now let's continue with consumption column. Here we have the consumption, C. And we have one value here, which is 104. This is important. Why? Because consumption function, composed of two parts. The first one is autonomous consumption. That means you spend no matter you have income or not. That's like basic needs to survive. And there is also one part which is called depends on your income, which has a slope MPC, B times after-tax income, Y minus T. So the consumption is given for the income level of 100. So let's write it. Okay, so 104 is here. And I know that from here, from this part, I can calculate this part. How? Because I know marginal propensity to consume, which is 0.9. And I know after-tax income, which is 60. Therefore, this part is 54. But I know that total consumption is 104. Therefore, the autonomous part of this consumption function should be 50. $50 I spend for necessary needs, which is not dependent on the income level, plus the change in consumption because of the income I have, which is after-tax income, but you have to multiply this with marginal propensity to consume. So with using this consumption equation, I find autonomous consumption as 50. It's going to be helpful for calculating consumption level at 200 and so on. So now let's do the second step, which we need to calculate consumption level when you have income of 200. So let's write it again. I know that autonomous consumption part is 50. So I will keep that part here. I'm not going to delete. Now I know here C is equal to 50 plus 0.9, which is marginal propensity to consume, times after-tax income. This time it's 120. So therefore I'm going to write here 120. And now 120 times 0.9 is equal to 108 plus 50 is going to give us the consumption, which in this case 158. Now let's do the next one, which this time I'm going to just change this part, which will be replaced by 180. So let's do that. 180 times 0.9, which is 162. So I'm going to replace this by 162 plus 50, 212. And let's calculate the remaining one. 240 times 0.9, which is 216, plus 50, 266. And now let's continue with the next one. 300 times 0.9, 270, plus 50, 320. And the last one, 360 times 0.9, plus 50, which is 374. So we calculate the consumption. Next column, as you see, is the sum of investment, government expenditures, and exports, which will be easy because all numbers are given here. I'm going to sum them up and write it. That's it. So let's do this column 2, which is I plus G. For exports, we use letter X. So which is the sum of 58 plus 60 plus 40, which is 158. And that's going to be the same. It's not going to change with the income level. 158 all the way down and 158. And the next column is minus imports. And imports, I know that it's the 10% of after-tax income. That's what the question says. So minus imports, I'm going to calculate the 10% of this number, which is 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. Now the final column is the aggregate expenditure. Let's write it down here. Final column is aggregate expenditure. Aggregate expenditure, let's write it here. Aggregate expenditure is equal to consumption plus I plus G plus X minus imports, M. So given this, I'm going to sum first 104 plus this number minus this number is going to give us the aggregate expenditure. So let's do that. 104 plus 158 minus 6, 256. I will do this for all rows that I have. So 158 plus 158, 316 minus 12, 304 here. And the next one, 212 plus 158 minus 18, that's 352. Next one, 266 plus 158 minus 24, which is 400. And I have two more left. 320 plus 158 minus 30, which is 448. And the last one is 374 plus 158 minus 36, 496. And now the question is asking, what is the equilibrium level? Equilibrium level is equal to when your aggregate expenditures, okay, this aggregate expenditures we calculate, is equal to the GDP, which is the income. Here, aggregate expenditures equals to GDP when the income level is 400. So the right answer is the second option. Now the second question. Which of the following data would be analyzed to determine whether any shift in the MPI, what is MPI? MPI is marginal propensity to import, has occurred over the course of the past 5-year period. So MPI is going to change related to exchange rates, right? Because MPI is marginal propensity to import. That means what percentage of your additional income you spend for imports. So MPS says marginal propensity to save, and this is not related to imports. Interest rates is not related again, but exchange rates for households are important. Why? Because if the exchange rate increase in value, that means the dollar becomes valuable. The purchasing power of dollars are increasing compared to foreign exchange rate. Therefore, imports are going to be cheaper, and therefore marginal propensity to import will change. For that reason, the right answer is exchange rate. Question number 3. The economy is in a recession and the government wants to increase output. If the multiplier equals 3 and the government increases spending by 250, how much will output increase by? The idea of the Keynesian economy is that Keynesian says that you can actually affect the aggregate expenditures. You can stimulate. How? By government spending or by tax. So if you look at aggregate expenditure components, it's consumption plus investment plus government spending plus exports minus imports. And by changing this G, actually, you can change the aggregate expenditure. That's the idea. For Keynesians, if the demand is low in the economy, and if the economy is in recession, especially production is low, employment is low, then the government should increase spending. When government increases spending, aggregate expenditure is not increasing by the increase in spending. So what does that mean? That means if the government spending increases by 250, aggregate expenditure rises more than 250. And the question is how much more, or why aggregate expenditure is increasing more than 250. So let's do some simple example. Let's say government spends this money to buy military equipment from a company, a firm. Okay, this is the firm. And you know that this firm with that income are going to pay for utilities, for workers' wages, for raw materials, and so on. And as you see, the wages are going to be an additional consumption. Remember that wages are going to be spent in the economy in the form of consumption. So when this 250 is injected in the economy, some part of this wages are going to be spent. How much? As much as the marginal propensity to consume. Remember, households do not spend all the money. So some of them is going to be saved, but the remaining is going to be consumed. So that is going to increase consumption. So as you see, we have a multiplier effect in the economy. Therefore, if there is an initial government spending, then the total change in aggregate expenditure is multiplied by initial spending times the multiplier. And that is going to tell us how much the aggregate expenditure changes. That delta sign means change. So initial spending is 250 and the multiplier is 3. So aggregate expenditure, because of this multiplying effect, increases by 750. Therefore, the right answer is the first option. Now let's look at number 4. When the economy is in a recession, the government will want to increase output, and the multiplier is 2.5. Multiplier is 2.5. Then the initial increase in government spending is 200. So how much the output is going to increase? Output or aggregate expenditure is going to increase by 200 times 2.5, which is equal to 500. Question number 5. Suppose that out of the original 100 increase in government spending, 60 will be recycled back into purchases of domestically produced goods and services. So G is 100, and I multiply this G with marginal propensity to consume and find out here this 60 turns out to be consumption or recycled back to this model. Remember, aggregate expenditure C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So if $60 of them goes back to the economy, that means the marginal propensity to consume is 0.6. That means an additional income of $100, 60% of it turns into consumption, investment, and other components, and 40% of it is saved in the economy. And we can find from here that marginal propensity to consume is 0.6. MPC is 0.6. Now, following this multiplier effect, what value will be recycled in the next round in the cycle? So this 60 is going to get back to the economy in the first round. Now, in the second round, 60 becomes again an income of some people in the economy. Only 60% of it is going to be recycled back. Every round, there is less and less money goes back into the economy. That's the idea of multiplier. And therefore, $36 goes back in the second round into the economy. The right answer is 36. Question number 6. If a Phillips curve shows that unemployment is high and inflation is low in the economy, so Phillips curve, if you remember, shows the relation between inflation and unemployment. And the relation was in the short run inverse relation. So that means if you have high unemployment, you have low inflation, and if you have high inflation, you have low unemployment. Because if there is a recession, that means there is not enough demand for production. And if there is not enough production, or production is piling up because people are not buying, then there is going to be high unemployment, but the prices are going to go down too because of the low demand. So therefore, inflation is going to be low, but unemployment is going to be high. And the reverse is true too. If there is high demand for production, then the prices are going to go up. When the prices are going up, we see a high inflation, but to catch up with the production and the demand, companies are going to hire more workers. That leads to low unemployment. And that's true in the short run. So now let's read the question again. If a Phillips curve shows that unemployment is high and inflation is low. Now we're talking about the recessionary economy. Then the economy is not producing at its potential for sure, because if it's in potential, we don't have any excess cyclical unemployment. The unemployment is at natural level. It might be at the equilibrium point, but that equilibrium point could be below potential. It's producing at a point where output is less than potential. If we have actually high unemployment, therefore economy is producing somewhere, let's say here, and this is my potential GDP. Potential GDP is the GDP level at natural rate. Below, somewhere below the potential, because we have here less production, and because of this production gap, we have high unemployment, and because of low demand, we have low inflation. So therefore, the right answer is the first one. Question 7. The Keynesian economic framework is based on assumption that prices and wages are sticky and do not adjust rapidly. That is true. People can afford a high level of government services. That's not what Keynes said. An increase in government spending will cause the aggregate demand curve to shift actually to the right, not to the left. An increase in government spending will cause the aggregate demand curve to shift to the left. The choices are same here, but they are wrong. So therefore, what Keynesian is saying that prices and wages are sticky and do not adjust rapidly. So this is the main difference between classical economists and Keynesian. Classical economists said that when there is low demand, prices will adjust, right? That means the price of the goods are going to go down. When the prices go down, the profit of the firms, and remember this prices includes the price of the final goods, profit of the firm will go down, and therefore wages and other costs, the prices of other inputs, are going to go down. So that's the idea of the classical economy, and therefore the economy settles back and self-correct itself. But unfortunately, when there is low demand, Keynesians say that when prices go down, profits go down, but people do not like to reduce the wage. The wages are downward sticky. The reason is because of the morale of the worker. When you decrease the wage, the morale and productivity of worker goes down. Instead, firms are laying off workers. When they lay off workers, this actually makes the situation worse, because low demand is going to get lower because of high unemployment. And the economy is not going to self-adjust. That's the idea of Keynesians. Number 8. The equilibrium quantity of labor increases and the equilibrium wage decreases. So we need to check here the market for labor, and we have the wage, we have the labor here. This is the labor supply, this is the labor demand. And the equilibrium quantity of labor increases and the equilibrium wage decreases. First of all, wages should be flexible. Why? Because if wages are not flexible, we do not see a decrease in wage. Labor demand shifts to the left. If labor demand shifts to the left here, both labor and the wage is going to go down, but it says that the quantity of labor increases. Therefore, we need to find a situation where we increase the labor, but we also decrease the wage. That's only possible when we shift the labor supply curve to the right. Look, when you shift the labor supply curve here, quantity of labor compared to this here increases, and wages compared to here goes down. Therefore, labor supply shifts to the right is the right answer. Question number 9. The equilibrium quantity of labor and equilibrium wage increases. So both of them, we are looking at a situation that both of them are increasing. Again, for sure wages should be flexible. This is labor supply, this is labor demand. So I need to find a situation that when I shift any of these curves, both wages and the quantity of labor increases. And that's only possible if you shift the labor demand curve to the right. When you shift the labor demand curve to the right, you realize that wages are higher compared to the previous wages. Wages old, wages new, and labor new is higher than labor old. Therefore, the right answer is labor demand shifts to the right if wages are flexible. Question 10. The equilibrium quantity of labor and the equilibrium wage level decreases. So this time we need to find a situation where both wage and labor should increase. Again, we start with wage, labor, labor supply curve, labor demand curve, and we need to find a situation both decreases. Therefore, we need to shift the labor demand curve to the left. When the labor demand curve shifts to the left, look, new equilibrium point is a lower wage and lower employment. New, wage new, compared to the old wage and old employment. So therefore, the right answer is labor demand shifts to the left. So that's it for today. Thank you.